Welcome to the Effective Engineering Manager podcast.
Hello, Adam. It's your time today. What do you want to talk about?
Hello, Slava. Today, I'd like to talk about time management and techniques for engineering managers to help manage time.
And why is effective time management important?
It's critically important because it is probably the most fundamental skill that's going to keep you from not sinking as a manager and showing your effectiveness overall. And it's important because it is the most fundamental tool for a manager that expands and affects everything else you do as a manager. All your work, all your tasks, managing people, how you're perceived, and ultimately how effective you are in delivering results. It allows you to utilize your time for the most important things and keep making sure you're on top of the most important things. And it also helps to develop a discipline for determining what is important for your time and what is not, so that you can either focus your time on the things that are important or delegate things that are important to other people on your team.
Great. And very briefly, what does effective time management look like?
It can be succinctly described as the following. Number one, taking care and control of your own schedule and time. Number two, showing that you're on top of what needs to be done and understanding your priorities. Number three, allocating time for what is important, especially your team, which often gets overlooked. Number four, not allowing others to dictate how and when you spend your time, and we'll get into that. Number five, many things can derive from managing your time. So because of that, you want to make sure you have time management well managed and well practiced and developing great habits. And six, and last, your team and people under you will see that you are in control and will effectively trust you more. They'll see that you have your stuff together and they will want to respect and learn from you, and you'll become a role model to them. And it's one of the ways that time management derives into many other things that can help make you a successful and effective engineering manager.
This sounds great. And let's begin. Tell me about your experience with the time management.
Sure. One of the things that I have always tried to balance from the time that I became a manager and started having directs was figuring out when to stop working in the day. Being an engineering manager, you're often consumed with so much. You have so many things hitting you from different areas, and you're often managing a platform. It can be a software platform or a product. You may have responsibilities for infrastructure and architecture. You may also have responsibility for customer management. And then you also ultimately have responsibility for your team. And none of that accounts for the time that you have to spend dealing with your boss and everything else that comes up dynamically, like product escalations, customer escalations, issues. Maybe as a manager, you have to manage support. And very quickly, your day gets consumed, right? The hours just fly by. And oftentimes you feel like you get to the end of the day and you feel like you've gotten nothing done because you've just been spending so much time just on so many different things that really nothing has really terminated in something very complete. And so you spend all your day, sometimes late hours at nights, often having to catch up on work and stay afloat. Oftentimes your teams are remote and you may have offshore teams that you have to sync up with. And so that obviously skews your time and when you have to sync up with them, right? If you have folks across the globe, you're going to be syncing up with them at night or first thing in your morning, really early in the morning. And so there are times where you feel overwhelmed, but it's really more about not burning out and being able to truly focus on the things that you start your day with when you walk into work, right? Again, trying to find a way to be on top of your time and take control of it. And so that when you start your day, you can be, truly energized and ready to start doing something you wanted and planned to do, despite whatever distractions come your way, right? So you walk into work, I'm going to go do this today. But then if something comes up and there might be a product escalation or your boss calls you in to do something that was unplanned, you want to avoid having to find a way to kind of brute force everything in real time. You don't want to have to find a way in the moment to develop a time management plan. You want to have the plan and the techniques in place so that when those things come up, you know how to allow them to flow through your system without getting bottlenecked or creating fires within yourself or within your team. And because as a manager, what's most important is that you need to ensure that you're there for your team. Your team looks to you as a leader, and you have to be there to maintain some form of normalcy and consistency. And if you maintain that, then they're going to be successful as well. And that's ultimately your sphere of influence. And so that's why time management is very important. And for someone new to engineering management, it's a really interesting dynamic for them because they're oftentimes coming out of an individual contributor role where, they may be very strong technically, and they try to maintain that as they become a manager, and they have new responsibilities. They have responsibilities for a team, but they're also being expected to be more attentive to other things. They may be in manager meetings, they may be in strategy meetings, they may have to meet with other teams, things that they didn't have to do before, right? And so the question is, can they handle a team on top of these other responsibilities, right? Because when you become a manager, you don't necessarily stop doing everything you've done before. You are just adding on to it. So now that you're adding on to it, you have a bigger time management problem. And if you didn't already have one. And so that's why it's really important. So to sum up, early on, I learned I needed to build an approach and develop great habits towards time management and look at effective tactical techniques to manage my time and recognize it's my most precious resource as a manager. And it's the most important tool to building confidence in my boss and my team that I was able to handle and demonstrate that I was able to handle everything that was thrown at me or on my plate. And, as a boss, when you make somebody a manager for the first time, when you don't have the data points to judge them yet, you're really looking to see that you have confidence in them first, right? You may think they're a great person and that's why you made them a manager, but you got to see that they can be self-sufficient, especially when things come up, and that they know how to juggle and manage priorities. And so time management is the one way to do that. And if you can master time management early on as a manager, you're going to build that confidence in your boss, and that'll open up more doors upward for you, in addition to being able to take care of what you have in front of you. And so that's why it's extremely important.
And what are the key components of the effective time management? How does an engineering manager know that they're managing the time effectively?
Yeah, great question. And there are so many techniques out there, but I think it boils down to 5 specific techniques and skills that can ultimately make a huge impact. First, time boxing. We hear that term a lot, especially in the agile world, but it is such a critical thing to do on the individual scale as well, especially as a manager. What is time boxing? It's where you basically take your calendar for the week, well before the week starts, and you wipe out everything that's on there, right? So the first thing you do is you take control of your time, right? Doesn't mean you don't do those meetings and other things, but you start by filling your calendar with priorities first. What is important to you? So you plan blocks in your schedule, 1 to 2 hours each, for each major item that you need to complete during that week, right? Which includes things like, I need to spend time with my team. I need to spend time just thinking, right? Maybe spending a couple hours a week, middle of the week, to maybe get away from all the busyness and strategize. Because as a manager, you're ultimately responsible for that longer term vision of your team, right? It's not about managing day to day. You have to have that vision. So you have to kind of look and say, man, the team suffered from this and this week. Let's think about how we adjust that for next week. So you're constantly leading and looking forward, and planning those blocks in your schedule is really important. And it can be other things like putting blocks for code reviews one-on-ones, which of course has to be in there, 30-minute blocks for each direct on your team. Putting in blocks for, if you have a meeting with your boss, if you have specific meetings you have to go to, if your boss has a status meeting, for example. Team building activities, right? And you're not trying to necessarily fill your calendar. You're just trying to make sure that the things that oftentimes get deprioritized are prioritized up front, right? So you're allowing yourself to take control of your time. So that's time boxing. So you set up your calendar that way, and then you have control and you stick to it. And look, you'll see things on your calendar that were there before that, man, I just can't fit that in. And you know what? It's just not that important. So now it becomes a question of, do you need to attend to it, or can you delegate it, or can it move somewhere else, right? So now you're forcing yourself to make decisions that you may not have consciously looked at before. So that's time boxing number one. Number two is what I call the weekly brain dump. And this helps to compensate for all the noise that happens and fills the week. No matter what type of engineering manager you are constantly going to be consumed with stuff that comes up during the week for all the reasons we mentioned a little earlier, right? So many things are affecting you. And even on a slow week, there's going to be a lot of things. People are going to be messaging you, and all things come up. And when those things come up, sometimes you address them in the moment. Sometimes you kind of dedicate a brain cell to holding on to that. And so what happens is your brain actually really does kind of fill up, and it's managing like all this information. Also remember, in this day and age, we are constantly being fed streams of information. It's not just talking to someone. It's email, it's Slack, it's Zoom meetings, Zoom calls, it's other documentation that you have to review. It's meetings. It's people, talking to you or reaching out to you, or phone calls or whatever. So you have these multiple streams of information coming into you, and you can only focus on one at a time. So the weekly brain dump says, okay, everything that's kind of come into my head this week, I'm just going to dump it all out in a notepad or on a digital notepad. And that process in itself is very cathartic, very freeing, right? Because it allows you to now free your mind to take on new things, but at the same time, really annotate the things that need to be taken care of, right? So the weekly brain dump, do it on a Friday afternoon, spend an hour, do the brain dump, list out everything that comes to mind, and prioritize it, right? So you're not just listing things out. You're prioritizing to say, is this a priority? Yes. Is this something I have to do? Yes. Is it something I could delegate? Okay. Who would I delegate it to? So come Monday, I can delegate that, or maybe I send an email ahead of time, or maybe I have a quick chat with that person, right? So you're channeling these priorities that come up kind of dynamically, right? So the weekly brain dump is a way to deal with all the noise that fills your week that you couldn't deal with, but that has to be attended to. Step number 3, or technique number 3, is what I call the zero inbox rule. As a manager, effective communication is very important. Being responsive, being attentive is very important. Does that mean you sit in front of your email box and just wait for emails to come in and respond to everything? No. That's where the zero inbox rule comes in. Zero inbox rule says, I am going to make sure that my inbox is almost as empty as possible. And that doesn't mean you just delete emails, or you don't read them, or you just purge whatever. There's a process to it. Here's the analogy. Take a physical mailbox in front of your house, right? Think about how we interact with our physical mailbox. Every day, you come home from work. What's the first thing you do? You check your mailbox. You empty your mailbox, right? You look at all the letters. You look at the junk mail. You look at the circulars that you can just say, okay, I'm just going to recycle this. And you really filter it down to the 2 or 3 letters or whatever that you need to attend to. Maybe there's a bill. Okay, I got my doctor's bill, or I have my electric bill. Okay, that gets filed away into our bills or whatever folder you have for that. Or maybe I have a letter from a friend that, I want to read, right? So we do that already in the physical context. We need to apply the same thing to our digital inbox. And so first thing we do, email comes in. If it's something that you have to look at it 3 ways. Number 1, is it something that I need to respond to? If it is, use that time to respond to it. Does that mean, again, you're not just constantly responding to emails, but at the times of the day when you're looking at email, use this methodology, right? Is it something you need to respond to? If so, respond to it, right? be concise, have a response. So you're dealing with it in the time when you need to deal with it. You're not waiting days, or it's not syncing, it's not getting missed. Second, is it something you don't need to respond to, but something that's important? Okay, then it means you need to file it away, kind of like the analogy to a bill you get in the mail, right? You need to put it into a folder, right? Something a team member sent that you just want to file away. Maybe it's recognition for something you wanted to store that. Put it in a folder, right? So you're taking it out of the inbox. And the third thing is, okay, is this something that I don't need and I really don't care about? Maybe it was sent to a distribution list, whatever. And you can don't be afraid to delete emails, right? If it's just something you really don't have to do anything with, delete it. You don't need to keep it, right? First of all, most mail clients, whatever, going into the trash bin doesn't immediately purge it permanently anyway. So if you absolutely have to get to it, you can always get back to it. But just delete it, right? It'll be freeing because there's nothing you're going to do with it anyways. So the zero inbox rule is very important, right? Those three things, just processing your mail, and you don't pick a few times during the day when you respond to email. If you see an email come in and you know it's important, it's from your boss or whatever, okay, maybe you jump on that in the moment. That's okay. This is not about how you manage time for email. This is about how you're addressing things that need your attention that are coming through email. The next technique is what I call notepad, pen and paper, right? Old school pen and paper. There is nothing more powerful than having a pen and paper by your side all the time. Why is that important? Similar to the weekly brain dump, things will come up in discussions and whatever that you need to just note down that are more short-term than even a week, meaning you can't let that sit and marinate for a week. You actually have to kind of take note of it, and so that you address it a couple hours from now or before the end of the day. And so the notepad, pen and paper approach is to be able to kind of quickly take notes of things that you need to take care of today. And literally at the end of the day, you look at your pen and paper and say, okay, yep, done, trash the paper, right? Now, do you have to do that every single day? No, but having that pen and paper by your side is critically important. It's quick. You don't have to worry about typing something. You don't have to worry about having it sync to the cloud. It's just physical. It's there. It's in the moment. It's easy. Last thing, don't ignore important meetings. This is as much a political concern for effectiveness as it is a actual practical concern. As a manager, you're going to be part of many different forums and groups. You're going to be part of other peer managers. You're going to be part of organizational strategy stuff. You're going to be part of all kinds of different inputs that you're going to have to give for product, for marketing, for things that you may not have even been aware of before. You have to know which meetings are important, right? And make sure you allocate time for those. And it's not just meetings where your boss is scheduling or attending. These are things that allow you as a manager to absorb and observe, right? A strategy meeting where, maybe you don't have much to say is just as important as your boss's weekly staff meeting. Why? Because it allows you to gain data points about how others interact, how the organization is, things that you can provide as information to your own team, things that help you make better decisions, right? Those are just as important. So you have to know which meetings are important, and don't just exit out or decline it because it's not something in your purview. Again, that's not effective time management, right? That's showing that you're too busy to be a manager, right? Too busy to be a leader. And if you cannot take the time to say, this might be an important thing for me to go to, then you're not managing your time effectively, right? So that's kind of another dimension to time management. It's not as tactical, it's much more strategic and, like I said, partly political. So those are some of the main techniques that I think you can easily apply. Doesn't matter if you're a junior manager or senior manager, you don't need much skill or training, and they really work. I've applied that myself. I've given it to my teammates, And when they're having time management issues, and within a week, I mean, they are relieved. They feel like they are able to be on top of their time again. And it so much is derived from it. So those are the main techniques.
Good stuff. And in my experience, the calendar always fills up because colleagues schedule meetings left and right. And if you don't control it, it will fill up to the point when we don't have time to think or to manage. So how do we keep our calendar available to ourselves?
It's a great point, and it's a great question. And as much as the techniques that we mentioned are so applicable and will help with that, it's still a very tough thing. As a young manager, a junior manager, it's even more difficult because you want to satisfy everything that comes in, right? You feel like something that's coming in. As a young manager, you have this desire to want to solve things and address things the same way you do as an individual contributor, right? You're given a task, you want to solve it, you want to complete it. But it's not as straightforward as a manager, right? Sometimes you actually have to make tough decisions. So you think in that moment that you have to be attending all these meetings. You think you have to go to, do all these things. And the first thing is to recognizing you don't. And to recognize that when people put something on your calendar or ask you to do something, they are not being mindful of your time. They are being mindful of their interests, right? Doesn't mean you don't help them, but it has to be in the context of how effective you can be to help them. So once you do time boxing, number one, you know where your priorities are. You know where you can fit things in, right? And that's your first guide. So if a meeting comes in, you look and say, well, I can't do this at 11 o'clock on Tuesday. That's my one-on-one with Joe on my team. And I don't want to, that's a priority for me. So you kindly, say, first of all, is this a meeting you have to be in? If it is where you have to be there, then you say to the person, the organizer, hey, is there a way that we could reschedule this to another time? I have a conflict. Here's a couple of other options for the week. That's number one. Number two is, again, determining if you really need to be there as a manager, right? Maybe there's a design review for a small feature that your team is responsible for, but you kind of know, okay, it's pretty straightforward. The project manager is just trying to keep things together, and we got to be attentive. So maybe you say, look, this is a great opportunity to delegate. So you turn to someone on your team and say, look, Joe, can you attend this meeting on Tuesdays at 11 with program manager John? And you're looking at this feature. It's a great opportunity for you to kind of have visibility, and then just report back to me on how things go, and keep me in the loop, right? So you delegate, you give opportunities to your team, you're showing you trust them, and you're managing your time, right? You're in that sphere of people that are the decision makers, but it doesn't always mean that you have to be the one making the decision. You can delegate it. You can, you'll learn how to absorb information succinctly from your team and teach them how to provide things succinctly because you just don't have the time. And be your proxy. So once you talk to the meeting initiator or organizer and say, okay, is there anything you need from me specifically? Is there anything I'm going to add of value to this? If not, I'm going to delegate to this so-and-so on my team. This person is going to be responsible for it. If not, if they don't need anything and you really don't need to be there, say, I'm going to decline this meeting, but of course, please reach out if you need anything at any time, and we'll take care of it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Doing it politely and professionally is actually in your advantage. And then, does that mean that you delegate your entire calendar to your team? No. You're not just pawning everything off to people. It's a balancing act. It's something you learn over time. Again, as a junior manager, you may not be comfortable or may not know how to delegate a lot. You may need to be in some of these meetings that you may not need to be in later on in your career. And it also depends on the team. If you have the folks on the team that are at the level that can, be your proxy, that you can trust to take things, right? Because that's important as well. So and as a matter of fact, if your boss is a good boss and has good management skills and has good time management skills, they'll see this and they'll respect that, even if they're also in that meeting, right? They'll see that you've delegated to someone you trust and that person is doing a good job, and it will shine well on you too. So it's not like you're deflecting that priority. You're basically saying, hey, someone on my team has done a good job and I want to give them an opportunity and let them handle it. And, while I keep working on the things that are highest priority for me. Right? So you do, and that's why one-on-ones and proper coaching are important, because those are also building blocks to keeping those options at your fingertips. So I think these are the two things to help you with not letting the calendar fill up. Slava, do you think you have a lot of good experience on your side? How do you deal with it?
So yeah, it's a good question, and so what you're saying is true, especially when it comes to ditching the meetings that you're not going to be contributing to or won't benefit, or the team or company won't benefit. And I really like what you're saying about the delegation. And one technique that I used before very successfully is regular calendar cleanups, and those are when you once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks, you take your calendar and look 2-3 weeks out and see if there are recurrent meetings which got in your calendar, stayed there, and you don't attend them, or you're not going to be benefiting from them, or the company won't be benefiting from them. And the techniques there is pretty much the same as you're describing, right? You go through the calendar, look at the meetings that you don't feel good about, and reject them politely and professionally, saying, hey, I would like to use this time for something else, but if something pops up, let me know. Here's my email, here's my Slack name. Ping me if something requires my attention.
Absolutely. And, what else is also important? Anything you do as your manager, as a manager, is looked on by your directs under a microscope too, right? Especially on a young team. Your people that you're responsible for will be always looking how you deal with situations, how you deal with managing your time, how you deal with stressors, right? If you're the manager that's always running around and you really, you're looking all over the place, you're running from this to that, you really don't seem like you have your schedule together, your team is going to look at that and be like, well, wait a minute, this person really doesn't have control of their time. On the flip side, if your team sees that you're completely complacent and not really having, rolling your sleeves up and being a part of everything, they're going to think the opposite. So it is a balance. It is important to recognize this, that you're always under the microscope, you're always being looked at. Everybody watches the CEO of a company, right? Everybody in the organization. They're always interested to see how he responds or she responds to things, how they operate, right? How they make decisions, how they are, kind of creating a culture. And it's even more magnified at that level. And, same thing for every engineering manager, right? So as your team is looking on you, you have to have good time management skills in order to have a good foundation for how you do everything. And that's what we mean by time management, and how you do it effectively derives to so many things that you do. If there's one real skill that you want to hone, it's time management. And by definition of that, when you're in a meeting with your directs, right, you can also relay the same techniques to them. And you're effectively laying the groundwork for not just you having good time management, but for your team to develop those same skills as well, right? But through this osmosis, you're going to end up building teams that are ultimately going to be more focused. They're going to be aware of their time. They're going to be more attentive in meetings. You're going to have meaningful dialogue in meetings. People aren't just going to be like scatterbrained and trying to multitask. And people are going to see that, if you scheduled a meeting or if you have a one-on-one, you will see that you're focused during that. I say, wow, that, this person that's either running this meeting or my boss that's doing the one-on-one has not only dedicated the time to talk with me, but they're focused and they're attentive. That is so key, right? You haven't just thrown things on the calendar because, man, we got to meet, we got to figure this out. No, it's methodical, it's thought through, it's planned. I'm not slacking or Zooming or doing anything else or emailing at the same time. And, for me, that was one of the silver linings in the learnings early on in my career as a manager. If I wanted to stand out, it's because I had to treat myself, act as if I was a CEO of my small little organization, right? Where I had to kind of present as best of an image I could. And every engineering manager should have that mindset, and that they could be the role model on their team. They have to set a good precedent. And so these are all the things that really feed right into how we operate, how we become effective engineering managers. And time management is one of those really good skills.
This sounds great. And if you had to summarize, can you give us a checklist for our listeners so that they can self-check and see if they're doing effective time management right?
Sure. So, quick checklist. Time boxing. Taking control of your calendar before it gets filled up by others. Making space for the things that are priorities based, to you. Number 2, weekly brain dump. Let everything that's come in through the week flow out somewhere and prioritize them. Number 3, the zero inbox rule, right? Emails come in, be attentive in addressing them, file them, delete them, or respond. Notepad, pen, and paper. Always have a quick way to take notes in real time, traditional old school way, and for quick things in the moment, things that you need to attend to by the end of the day. And last, 5th, don't ignore important meetings. Understand what is important, and what's important is not always the obvious things. It's certain things that are strategically and tactically, not just tactically important. So that would be the checklist for our listeners, and I hope that people listening can apply these, and you can start tomorrow.
Thank you, Adam. Looking forward to more good stuff.
Thank you, Slava. More good stuff is coming.